What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Triple H podcast. Happy Hour Hoops. It's NBA Draft Week, boys. I will say, since the season has ended, we've kind of been spoiled with keeping our attention on the NBA here between the trades,
It never
the
fails.
just the drama off court with some different players, and then now we're already in draft week. So, how you guys feeling about draft week?
It came up quick. That's how I feel. I feel like it came up quick. I know it always comes up quick, but the NBA Finals are over. You blink, and now we're talking about the draft class. And we were talking about it before. This is one of the most interesting draft classes in a while because you have potentially 4 of the top 5 picks being guys who did not play college basketball, which is kind of crazy when you say it that way. You have the number 1 prospect, Victor Wembanyama, who is considered a generational type prospect. And then you have 2 other guys, Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson, where in different draft classes probably go number 1 overall. I know Brandon Miller has some off-court question marks, and then you got Scoot Henderson. It's a G League guy. So everyone has kind of questions in the top 5 besides Wembanyama, unless, you want to be one of those guys like, oh, I don't know if he'll translate. He hasn't played against anyone great. But really, it's crazy because we have a generational prospect, and then we've got maybe 4 or 5 guys that we didn't watch play college basketball. Maybe you watch some of the overtime elite guys. Maybe you watch, some highlights from the guys, in the G League overseas, doesn't matter. But it's crazy because it's different than previous years where a lot of guys, it's like, oh, a ton of people watch these guys. This is just kind of unknown. This is just kind of going on scouting and kind of going on highlights of what we've seen, unless you want to be that guy who lied and been like, oh, I watched every single game start to finish. So we'll see. I'm excited. I think, obviously, the Victor buzz is the main reason why there's so much hype around this class. But I think there's a lot of question marks and there's a lot of kind of unknowns this year, more so than previous years, which is it's going to be a fun draft class because there's a lot of teams that could add some of these guys. There's a lot of teams. The NBA is as competitive and as probably deep and talented as it's ever been, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. So this could be a really big draft class for those, kind of teams on the fringe to try to get those guys, because I think you could find a lot of players after pick 3, in my opinion. Maybe you can go to pick 5, but after pick 3 to pick 5, it's a lot of guys that we could go anywhere from like 8 to 20. You really don't know in that range. And I think that's what makes a draft class so exciting.
How about you, Jake? How you feeling on draft week?
I'm just so excited to finally get to hear the Greg Popovich and Victor Wembanyama press conference. I really am. Like that's yes. I will be locked into that like I was any finals game when it's I hope Timmy D's up there too. Like give us the whole like future right there, because it's really like the big, I mean, there's a lot of interesting storylines. A more interesting thing for me, the draft night, is the trades that could end up happening. There's 2, I think, mega trades that are been heavily rumored for draft night that we'll get into later on. But really, just seeing Wemby, seeing this come to fruition. We've been talking about this guy for a better part of the last 2-3 years. He's going to San Antonio, which is probably the best case scenario out of all the teams. So it's just exciting to kind of see that come forward. And a Greg Popovich press conference is always fun. And let's see him giddy. Like maybe he's going to be excited. I don't even know. Like who knows what that's even going to look like, but I'm sure it's going to be great vibes in San Antonio. It's going to be a big party tomorrow, Thursday night.
Yeah. So we're going to do draft talk to round out the show. So we'll cover all our bases there at the end. Start with the news and notes. And speaking of this guy, I don't have it here in the doc, but I did just see it on Twitter before we hopped on. Victor Wembanyama is throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium right now. So obviously his life's about to change forever 2 days from now when he gets drafted in the NBA draft. But I can't imagine how cool this summer must be for him before the season starts. Like this dude is just on the tour of all tours. Everyone giving him stuff. Like I saw a sneaker page posted a picture of him throwing out the first pitch, and he was wearing these unreleased Nike shoes that Drake created, I guess. So it's just like as if this guy's life couldn't get any cooler. It seems like he's about to have a crazy, tour throughout the states before becoming one of the NBA's biggest stars. And I mean, that just must be an awesome moment for the kid.
Did you see he took a picture with JJ Redick? I don't know if you saw it. He's towering over JJ Redick. And JJ Redick is 6'4".
6'4".
Yeah, he's 6'4". And Victor is not 7'3". This might be a 7'5", 7'6" guy. I looked at that picture, I go, he might be taller than 7'5". It's just crazy because that's one thing too. Obviously he's doing the tour, but seeing him taking pictures with other like former or current NBA players is just eye-opening because now we're really seeing the height difference this guy has, where it's like, holy shit, like this guy's a giant amongst giants. And that is crazy with potential the skill set that he's gonna have.
I'm excited for Wemby, man. Jake, anything on Wemby before we get into the juicy stuff in the news here?
No, it's been great. It's great to see him. Like he seems like he's a fun guy. Like just he's pretty open with everything. He's active on social media and like in good ways, like in engaged ways and everything. So he's somebody that is coming over and wants to be embraced and is gonna be embraced as much as he really wants to be. And it is staggering to see just like him holding the baseball and like you said, the picture with JJ. It's going to continue to be staggering. Tomorrow night, like those rookie pictures when he's standing next to a guy who's like a legit 7-footer and just over top of him. It's going to be crazy forever. Like it is. I'm just very excited to get to. It's going to be just an exciting season for him coming forward and big night coming up. I mean, that's a lot of eyeballs going to be on him in a lot of different ways.
Last thing on Wemby here. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm already excited to bet Victor Wembanyama's points, rebounds, assists his very first game as a Spur. Oh, yeah. I've been thinking about it already. I'm like, that's if I'm excited for any NBA bet next year, it's Wemby's points, rebounds, assists in his debut. So yeah, we'll see it. It's going to become real. We're recording this Tuesday live. It's going to come real Thursday night, and super exciting. We'll see what kind of suit he's in and all that fun stuff. Jake, you mentioned being responsible on social media. We know John Morant messed up there a couple times. Easy segue. John Morant finally gets the suspension, 25 games, which, from the comment we heard from Adam Silver a few weeks ago during the draft lottery and just some of the things we've seen on social media throughout the offseason here, it seems like it was going to be a lot worse, in my opinion. John Morant gets 25 games. I feel like this could have been way worse. It's really only a little bit more than a quarter of the season. The Grizzlies have proven they can win while Ja sits out games anyway. So I don't know. I guess first reactions from you guys. What did you guys think of this? I thought it was kind of on the lighter side. I thought he kind of dodged a bullet, but obviously still 25 games is a lot.
25 games, the same amount that Ayton got for his steroids or whatever else. So that's what we're comparing. Like I like to compare the sentences all the time. It's because you see it with football how uneven it always is. And you're like, there's no consistency to this. I think we're in the same situation. I don't think that's the same offense. I don't think that's the same kind of detriment to the self, not even to the league and the team, which Ja, I would say, arguably has done more damage to the image of the league, his team, an organization than Ayton did in this scenario. And I'm only comparing it because it's the same amount of games, and to say that I think it should have been a little heftier. I don't know if this is really going to matter. Like it said, matter to them. If they go 13-12 and he comes back and he's awesome, is this really going to affect? And there are other provisions that are in line with the suspension that he has to achieve before, being, even if he makes it to 25 games and doesn't get whatever the provisions are, we're not privy to them at the moment. He won't be able to return to the team and everything. But why would we trust what the league and the team had done at this point to support this guy? Like he made the same mistake twice. We got the toy gun excuse. Now there's a thing coming from his camp that says the media is out to get him, which is insane because there's nobody else flashing guns on Instagram that is an all NBA talent. So I don't think anybody's out to get you, bro. Like I think this is a pretty standard affair, and I think any criticism is fair when you're acting stupid in the public. That's just how being a celebrity is. So I think that this is a little light, and I think it's been a trend for Adam Silver in these moments with big time superstar players to kind of go easy on them. And like we talked about a year when this first came out, we talked about this is an incident that you cannot let keep happening, and you should set a standard here and make him, if somebody needs to be an example of fucking around on social media, then Ja Morant might need to be the person. They didn't do that. They didn't set an example. They didn't do shit. They coddled him for 8 games, brought him back, let him fuck up again, and then only suspended him for a quarter of a season. I just think it's a bad precedent to set because we talked about setting early on, and this isn't it.
Yeah, I think it's super light. It almost feels to me like this is kind of like a warning suspension where Ja has had a bad track record, where it's, like you said, didn't learn his lesson the first time because obviously he did it again. And this is one of those situations where I feel like this is 25 games. It's kind of like, all right, Ja, we're letting you off easy this time because we know what you can mean for this league. Before all the off-court issues with Ja Morant, he was considered one of the most exciting players in basketball, and he still is on the court. He was considered one of those young guys who's going to be the face of the league going forward, and obviously a lot has changed since then. But this is kind of a situation where I feel like it's almost like a little slap on the wrist. Where like, all right, Ja, you're getting off easy this time. 25-game suspension, which now it's not a tiny suspension. That's almost a third of the season. That's going to affect the Grizzlies a decent amount. That's really going to hurt them. But still, for what Ja Morant did, and like you said, for kind of how the image looks in the league, it just feels very light, and it almost feels like this is kind of a warning, hey, we're giving you this suspension. Get your act together, figure it out, because we want you to be a future in this league. We want you to be someone that people want to watch because he's an exciting player. He's that type of talent you don't see every year. But we'll see. I feel like this could be something where, you know what, if he has his 25 games and then he's good to go the rest of the year, we don't really think anything of it. And we're like, all right, maybe that was, a kind of a good move in that part of we're not going to be too harsh, but we're going to give this guy another chance. But if Ja gets in trouble again, then we could see something, I think, really, really serious to the point where he could be out of the league.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting situation, too, because, Jake, I like that you brought up Adam Silver because he has, flip-flopped on his discipline to bigger market teams as a whole, and then,
True.
Star players in general. And it was so weird, like the comments on draft lottery night, he made it seem like we were going to see a year-long suspension or a suspension until he takes, indefinitely until he takes some sort of courses. I mean, the way his tone was, and that he brought it up and then said he didn't want to talk about it, you assumed it was going to be more than 25 games. So he's obviously playing both sides of the fence here, where he realizes, how polarizing Ja is for many different reasons, and how much of a huge market he's made the Memphis Grizzlies since he's come into the league. So it's just still surprising to me that it's only 25 games. But something interesting to me is the second half of the season next year for both Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies is going to mean more than the last 3 years have meant for this organization and individual, because, say Ja comes back after the 25 games and they were already playing well without him. They get off to a good start. They're in the playoff picture without him. And he comes back and doesn't do the gun thing on social media again, but his behavior doesn't change. What's stopping the Grizzlies from saving their own image and saving their own franchise and core that they have right now and trading Ja Morant? I mean, I don't think that's out of the question if he can't, if there's some in-between piece where he can't get his act together completely, but he's not doing anything that's going to remove him from the court. Like if they just still see that he has the same attitude and he hasn't changed, I don't think that's out of the question. So if you're Ja Morant, you really got to, kind of keep to yourself during this 25-game suspension, block out whoever you got to block out, and I think move on at this point. Like I'm seeing stuff earlier this week about them saying it was the gun was like a lighter. It acts as a lighter. He uses it in his house to light candles. Like it just, at this point, it's like, dude, it's over. You should probably start to think about what you can do next to improve and help the Grizzlies win. And I know that might sound insensitive, but how long are we going to do this for?
Also, if you really is a gun lighter, then it's just stupid to have a gun lighter, because was it worth it? Was your gun lighter, was it fun to light those candles or whatever, your cigars or whatever you were lighting with your gun lighter? Was it worth it? Was it worth the 25 games and 17, however millions of dollars you have lost, whatever that total is? It's crazy. If anything, he's just being just an idiot, and that's what he needs to get suspended for, to just be smart. Him and Zion. It's crazy. It's crazy that these two in this same draft, and I don't think it's an accident. I think it's social media. I think it's a lot of star power, a lot of success and fame and money and everything early on in your life. It's all a lot of trending things, but it's just crazy because like 2 or 3 smarter decisions, and neither of these guys are. We're not even talking about them. We're just talking about them as basketball players, nothing else. Maybe not Zion as much for other things, but it seems like all of his issues are related to maturity, and obviously that's where we're at with Ja too.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up Zion, because I had in the doc that we could talk about some trade rumors today. The Zion trade rumors have picked up heavily in the last few days because there's been reports that upper management in the Pelicans organization are not happy with the things that have come out on social media the last couple of weeks with Zion, and obviously him dealing with his own off the court stuff. And then obviously, there's probably some built up frustration of him not being able to stay on the court as well. So
there is rumors that there are players on that team that are not happy with Zion, obviously, that
I also
don't work with him anymore.
Zion has shown he doesn't want to play for him. I truly believe
he said it. So, he literally has said
it. So that's why I don't blame the other players for being like, screw this guy. He doesn't want to play for us, because the Pelicans, flashback a year ago at this time, or maybe a little bit later in the summer, we were talking about him as a sleeper team to maybe go to the finals.
Yep.
They have a great core. They had a great team, and now you have that guy who's supposed to be that generational player you have, and he doesn't even want to play. He doesn't even want to try. And what pissed me off, and what I think pissed a lot of people off, is when you would see him in warm-ups, like, dude, this guy looks game ready. Mm-hmm. And then he's just sitting there on the sideline, and now you have the off-the-court issues as well. But it's one of those things, Dunny. It's like, and that's, I think, the hardest thing. You have the talent of Zion, right? You have the talent. The health is a concern. The health is always going to be a concern with Zion. But I think a bigger concern, too, for teams that are going to have to trade, because it's not going to be a little bit. You're still going to have to trade a lot to get Zion.
That's crazy.
The big question for those teams is like, is this guy going to buy into our team? Is he going to buy into our culture? Is this going to be a guy that's going to not break up the locker room? Because right now, we look at a team that's good, like a New Orleans team, and you have players coming out there. You have Zion who's, pouting, saying he doesn't want to play for this team. And it's like, what team wants to trade that much away? Because you're going to have to give up a lot to get a guy who's not only very injury prone and hasn't really shown that he can stay healthy for long periods of time, but also could be a locker room cancer. That's a big, big decision to make. And I get the potentials there. I get the talents there. But that's a question you got to be asking yourself is he worth it? Is this guy worth it? Do we want to, put all our chips on the table for Zion, who, if we go back a few years, could be the next big thing in the NBA?
Yeah, how quickly time goes, right?
Yeah, right.
Zion, he's already, people were giving him the benefit of the doubt for a little bit with the injury, and now when
the thing is, when he's on the floor too, he's like unstoppable.
I know. That's the thing. Unstoppable. We've seen him when he's 100% and he's good to go. He's got to be top 5.
Yeah.
He has to be when he's fully healthy and good to go. And we haven't seen him.
He's putting up like 30, 13. And he's putting up Jokic numbers, legitimately like Jokic stat lines running point Zion. And then he just can't sit. And that's the thing. Like, if it's maturity, if it's just that he needs to just grow up and focus on, like, because that's the problem right now, right? Like, if he has no incentive, unless he actually cares about being a great basketball player, which remains to be seen at this point. Right. He has no incentive to get better. He already got paid. He has $175 million, no matter where he ends up, whether it's New Orleans, Charlotte, New York, wherever team trades for him. He's got the money. So it's really like, what matters to you, Zion? I think Ja wants to hoop. And I think that might be the saving grace for that 25-game suspension, going back to that, is that missing basketball for Ja is like the biggest thing. He's been
True.
very honest about that. Zion, I don't know if he cares, man. He might just be in it to get that
You're
bag
right.
at this point. Like he's like he had it. Think of how easy like Zion's life. He was playing against nobodies, right? Like just dunking on this like kids our size, like all the time. Goes to Duke, has it pretty easy at Duke.
Sits out for a while.
Sits out for a while too. Yeah. Has it pretty easy though, and then shows up and has to be a professional. He might just be like, I'm not about this life, bro. Like he's never really. It's not like he was AAU circuit. It's not like he was professionalized in any sort of way, like all these other prospects are or anything. And he just got to the league and it doesn't help that it's New Orleans either. Like, mind you, if he went to a better situation, maybe Zion's already the star he is. New Orleans has perpetually been a mess for years, ownership, coaching wise, everything. But man, like. It's just crazy to see like a guy with all that. Like you everybody gets so mad because you hate to see the fumble of the talent, but I feel like it's the professionalism that's hurting him over and over again.
Oh yeah, man. It's just
big...
like,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's all of it in one. And yeah, you bring up a good point about, he never even had to have a drive for the game. Like he's just so physically gifted. Like we look back and laugh at those videos of him in high school where like people are like scoffing, trying to guard him or like looking back at their coach. Like, you're seriously putting me up against this kid. Like that's how easy it was for him. Yeah. He could jump out of the gym at age 14 and was dunking over everybody. Then he goes to the best college basketball program imaginable. You mentioned he sits out. They don't really, for how talented that team was, they didn't really impress anyone that year. And then
almost lost to Taco Fall.
Yeah. And then here we are, and we hear rumors that he loses the weight, and then we see him on the court, and we're like, it doesn't look like he lost the weight. People are saying he's healthy. We're seeing him in warm-ups, like Steve mentioned, throwing down windmills, and then he's like, I'm still not ready to play. Teammates don't like him. It's a really sticky situation for Zion. At this point, I don't know how much of last year was actually injury or it's just him not wanting to play. And if it was injury, I hope he gets healthy because as an NBA fan, we want to see him out there. But I don't think, maybe he makes it and plays the first few months for the Pelicans, but I don't think Zion Williamson ends next year in a Pelicans jersey.
No, and that's what I was going to say. I think it's the biggest red flag when you have a player of Zion's talent level and his teammates are like, I don't want to play with this guy. Mm-hmm. That's when it's a big red flag. It's not like this is just some role player like, oh, he's a locker room cancer. I don't want to deal with him. He's a diva. I don't want to deal with him. No, this is a guy who is a potential to take this team over the top, to make this Pelicans team from a good team to an elite team. And the players are like, I don't want to deal with this guy. That's a big red flag for me because maybe it's not just a New Orleans thing at that point, right? And that's where I think the biggest concern is like, if Zion doesn't kind of change that, then what's going to happen with the next group of teammates? That's where I have the big red flag where, like, do you really want to risk it for this guy, for this potential, for this, potential talent to have on your team when you have, other players being like, I can't do it. I can't deal with this guy. I can't play with this guy. This guy doesn't believe in us. This guy doesn't want to play for us. That's a red flag to me when other players are like that.
Yeah, and we'll see with Zion. Steve, you made your bold prediction last week that he could be getting traded to the Big Apple.
That's a team that would take the chance.
Yeah,
they would take a chance to make a splash like that.
And I wouldn't be surprised, but we'll talk a little bit more about Zion when we get to our draft stuff at the end. A little teaser there. But yeah, it's a weird situation. Like I said, I don't think Zion will be a Pelican by the end of next season. So we'll see. Other news: Michael Jordan sells his majority stake of the Charlotte Hornets. Kind of surprising, kind of not. It feels like MJ's, almost forgettable at times that he's a partial owner of the Charlotte Hornets. I think the craziest thing to me is he bought his stake for $275 million back in 2010, I believe, and then sold it for $3 billion. Yeah. And PFT on Part of My Take was talking about this, but he was like, that just goes to show you that like buying a sports team in today's day and age is almost never a bad investment because he didn't do anything with the Hornets. The Hornets have not done anything, like less than nothing since 2010. And he just made a disgusting profit. He's made $3 billion for giving a bag to Gordon Hayward, who got injured every year. Like, all they've done is draft LaMelo Ball in the last decade and a few extra years, and he turns it into $3 billion. More of a crazy story than anything. My initial thoughts was maybe we start to see the Hornets get blown up and them go in a completely different direction, but yeah, just a crazy money move by MJ. That's why he's the GOAT.
MJ, I said, there's no way, like, this man now, like, what, he should just go buy an island. He needs to buy an island. All he needs on is a golf course and an airport, so he can fly his friends in. They could just gamble there. They could have his own casino down there, whatever. That man's gonna disappear. Like, MJ sell it. He's been trying to sell his mansion in Chicago since I moved here. There's been talks about that mansion being for sale in Arlington Heights. I'm assuming he's not going to live in Charlotte. Like, I just imagine we're just going to see pictures of like Jordan on golf courses and at resorts or at beaches, or just we're never going to see him. And he just has his own island that he's going to live on. So good for Michael. Cash out. I mean, between Jordan brand and the Hornets, the man is a billionaire a couple times over at this point.
Yeah.
God bless, man.
Can't blame him. Can't blame him for that.
No. Can't at all, man. Shout out Michael Jordan. I do. I don't know why, but I almost walked it back. I left the tweet up, but when I tweeted out that he sold the team, I used the MJ crying meme, and then I saw the numbers, and I'm like, dude, this guy's probably as happy as he's ever been.
Tears of joy.
Yeah.
Crying tears of joy right there, Donnie.
So yeah, that's awesome, man. Good for Michael Jordan, and we'll see. It should. I think Hornets fans should be excited about this because, I mean, most of the time, especially in today's NBA, when there's new management, moves start to get made, or at least big change starts to happen, and I'm sure Hornets fans want that. So we'll see in Charlotte. Last piece of news here before we get to the big trade and our draft talk. That was a teaser. Not that yet. Draymond Green declines his player option for the Warriors. It was exciting for a few minutes. And, obviously Shams could be wrong, but Shams quickly reported that he thinks this is just Draymond and the Warriors restructuring a deal for him to ultimately return to the Warriors. I'm still living on my little island where I think he's going to Detroit just because I have this gut feeling about it. What do you guys think about Draymond declining the deal?
I'm in line with Shams. I think that if he was I think that that's been the report, at least the reporting that I've heard and read at this point. But it also makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Like, Draymond's going to get a guaranteed 3 to 4 million or 3 to 4 years probably out of this, which is probably a longer deal than he was looking at. I'm assuming he already has, tampered plenty. Rich Paul has tampered plenty with the rest of the teams that would be interested in Draymond. They know what his market would be. And what better, you finish your career with this team. If he goes 3 years and gets paid, what was the player option? You had it down. I can't remember what the exact price was, right? Or it wasn't on here, but I don't remember what the option was. I think it was like 27 million or something, 27.5.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're exactly
so
right.
Say he signs 3 years, 60 million or something like that. That really helps a cap strung Warriors team who has a lot of financial decisions to make, and Draymond was one of the biggest things. I really think that there's Poole, Clay, Draymond, big contracts. I don't know if Poole's going to be long for there, but this Draymond thing, if he's willing to take a lesser contract to keep Jordan Poole around, what a turn of events that would be. But
True. Yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. All I'm going to say is Draymond will look nice in Maverick blue. That's all. That's the only thing else I'd say.
Draymond, there's a lot of fun teams. If Draymond does decide to up and leave, like, there's a lot of fun teams I think he could end up to. Donnie, would you pay Draymond? All this rumors about Vooch, all these rumors about Porzingis, Wouldn't you rather just spend that on Draymond Green?
Yeah. I hate
Vooch,
this question.
I hate the Vooch proposition for you guys, by the way, too. If that happens,
my dad brought that up to me the other night. I'm like, I don't want Vucevic anywhere near the Boston Celtics. That solves nothing. That solves zero of the Celtics' problems. I wanted Vucevic in 2017 on the Celtics. I don't want a washed up scoring big he's basically an Al Horford that's offense is slightly better and defense is much worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, unless Brad knows something that we don't, and Al's quietly going to retire or Al's getting moved. But I don't think that's the case. I don't want Vucevic. Porzingis, I would rather than Draymond Green. I just don't. Strictly for the vibes. Like, Draymond has spoken out countless times about how much he hates Boston and the fans are racist and
that's true.
All these things. It's like, I don't think he would want to come here. I would take him.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't think he'd be down for it.
He's also part of the LeBron mafia, which is that's why everybody was like, "Oh, Chris Paul to the Celtics." I was like, "There's no way LeBron is letting Chris Paul go to the Celtics, man. There's no shot."
So I was
like one of those things.
Yeah, a little off topic here, but I'll keep it with Draymond when I round it out. I was prepared for all of the Celtics rumors this summer, but some of them have just been so bizarre, man. Like the Chris Paul one, like I saw trading Marcus Smart to the Suns for Chris Paul. It's like, who in their right mind would do that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I like Marcus Smart too much, but that just seems like a bad deal. You're getting 1 year of Chris Paul, who couldn't stay healthy to end last year, and you're giving up the Defensive Player of the Year, who just started to become like a very good playmaker.
True.
And then then the Vucevic deal and everything. But all that said, mine and Jake's mutual friend Brett texted me the other day. It was like, I would take Draymond in Boston. I would too. I honestly think it would be a really good fit. Probably the toughness that this group needs. But like I said, I don't think he would be down for it. But I would do it if Brad wants to give Draymond the money and try to win a couple in Boston for Draymond. Hey, come through. But Shams is probably right. It's probably boring. He's probably going back to the Warriors. But I think it's going to depend on a lot of different things and, what they do with everyone else on the squad, because they definitely need to make improvements.
What I think with him, though, is like that maybe that deal is even smaller than what I'm thinking, because he might be looking at it from the pool, like bird's eye view, and be like, I want to be remembered here, like as a legend, not as the guy who punched a teammate, we flamed out, and then I left and had a terrible end to my career, right? Like even if he plays terribly, then by the end of his career, he's going to be beloved, and if he stays at Golden State at this point, if he stays for this last contract. So I wonder how much of his legacy and that kind of thing goes into this conversation.
I wonder if that's where his head's at now too, because remember this time last year, we're all like, oh, Draymond said he wants money next year. He wants a bag. He wants another extension. And it seems like since he punched Jordan Poole and his image kind of got a little messed up from that, it almost seems like he wants to repair it. And he's like, okay, I got to stay in Golden State. I got to get back to the championship with this group. I got to make amends with the young guys on my team. I'll come back on a team-friendly deal. That's kind of where I'm at with Draymond as far as, analyzing his situation, because, I mean, his agent literally came out last summer and was like, Draymond wants a payday or something along those lines. Because remember, there was the whole Kings thing and all these teams were interested. So I would love it if Draymond had that same energy, just because I think we talked about it last week. Draymond would have a huge market if he did come out and say that, he's declining it because he doesn't want to go back to Golden State. So I would love to just watch that pan out through the summer, but yeah, it's more likely than not he's going back to Golden State. Do you guys ready to talk about the big trade here?
Oh yeah.
There's a trade.
Just a small one, just all-star Bradley Beal to join Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on the Phoenix Suns. Matt Ishbia has been the GM for
balling, baby. For
4 months.
Shooters.
And he's acquired KD, beefed with Jokic on the sidelines, and then traded for Bradley Beal.
And fired Monty Williams. And fired the coach that made the finals.
We talk about that.
What a start.
What a start. This man is on fire. Whew.
It's insane, man. I mean, where do you guys want to start here? There's so many things I could say. What are your guys' initial thoughts? What are you guys' thoughts now?
I mean, it's a weird deal for me because I think they didn't give up that much. They really didn't give up.
They
that
really
much
traded like
Bradley
Chris
Beal.
Paul for Bradley Beal. Like if you're just talking lineup,
they traded 1 more year of Chris Paul, a second round pick. I think it was a pick swap, and then Landry Shamet, which is like you could have said Steve instead of Landry Shamet, and that's the same type of deal there. It's like, all right, yeah, it's a guy who's going to wear street clothes for most of these games on the Wizards side of the bench, but they didn't trade much. But I still look at it and I'm go, is this the right fit? Is this the right direction to go? Look at the Phoenix Suns and what were the questions we had about them at the end of last year? It's like they just don't have depth. They don't really have, defense either out interior or on the outside. And it's like Bradley Beal doesn't bring you that. Bradley Beal is just a scoring guard. Yes. And you already have 2 players who are much better than Bradley Beal at what Bradley Beal does best. And I'm not saying anything against Bradley Beal. I like Bradley Beal. And I think we were talking about this a little bit. Maybe Devin Booker turns into kind of that hybrid point guard, shooting guard, because we've seen that when Paul has been hurt, Devin Booker has stepped up and he can play that role. And I think the Suns would be comfortable having him play that role. So maybe that makes a little sense there. But I just don't think adding another guy who's a scorer who probably would need 15 to 20 shots a night to really reach his full potential of what he can bring to a team is the answer for the Phoenix Suns. Now, if they get maybe a trade DeAndre Ayton and get a package of maybe they get depth in some guys, this deal could look a whole lot different in a couple months. But right now, when I look at the Phoenix Suns, yeah, you added a star. I'm not going to call him a superstar, but I'll call Bradley Beal a star who can be a great scorer at times, an elite scorer sometimes, and he's had seasons like that. But you added him when you already have 2 guys who are already better at that. Yeah, he's an incredible third option scoring, but he doesn't really bring anything to this team, which has been the big question marks or the big holes of this team from previous seasons. I don't think the Phoenix Suns are done. I would be shocked if they are done and they're rolling out with this team because they basically have no bench, no depth whatsoever, and they have a center which they don't really know what to do with Ayton, who's taking up a monster deal as well. So I don't think the Suns are done. It's hard to really evaluate this trade when the team I don't feel is complete or it's not going to look the same as it will on opening night come next season. However, Bradley Beal's a great player, and once again, the Phoenix Suns, I mean, they're gonna be a force because they got 3 guys who at any given night could score 30 points on you. And a lot of teams don't have that type of, they don't have that type of privilege or they don't have that ability. However, right now the fit just feels weird to me, and it's not like it's a bad deal because I think they won the deal. I don't think they gave up a lot for him, but it's like, I don't love the fit.
The conversation that we're having about the fit and the basketball fit, not just us, but in general, feels a lot like the conversation we had around the Nets team. And it was fair conversation then. A lot of high usage guys didn't know how it would work, whatever. That didn't work because of basketball reasons, or that didn't end up not working out because of basketball reasons, though. There were a lot of other reasons that didn't work out. And they were Kevin Durant's big toe away from beating the Bucks and maybe going to the finals that year.
True.
So I do think that this blueprint can work because Kevin Durant, and everyone's like, why is Kevin Durant doing this again? He's getting 2 scores, getting the super team. Because he probably thinks it would have fucking worked if the guys didn't go crazy on him. He probably thinks, man, if Kyrie and Harden weren't tripping, we'd probably would have won a title. I wouldn't even have to be here. Like, that's probably what KD is actually, if you put your mind in if you think of it where Kevin Durant's perspective is, he has every right to feel like that because we saw it happen in front of us. Like, he hits that 3. Who knows what the course of NBA history is for the Bucks, for the Nets, right, for the Suns in general, like a lot of teams. So the fit, and it is different because I don't think Beal is Kyrie or Harden, and that's He is not that level of talent. He's not either of those kinds of guys. I do think we talked about, you mentioned Booker being the hybrid point and everything. And I have seen people push back on that saying, is that the best use of Devin Booker or whatever? I'm like, it might not, maybe it isn't the best use of Devin Booker, but is it the best use of Kevin Durant? But is it the best use of Kevin Durant, who's a top 15 player of all time? Like, I love Booker. He's awesome. But if he's the number 2 and he's a playmaker and Kevin Durant is your number 1 because of that, I think Book's going to be okay with that. Like, I feel like he's going to be good with that. And the Ayton thing, I think, is the biggest, like, unsaid. Like, it's the biggest elephant in the room, not unsaid thing. We're saying it right now. He is good. That move is happening. Like, that's where they're going to get their depth. They're going to move Ayton for 2 pieces and a pick, maybe, to try to fill this out. Dunny, DeAndre Ayton for Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon. How does that feel?
I don't think I'm willing to give up Rob for him, but if there's some way, you sign and trade Grant, you give him Pritchard, you give him Brogdon, I'd be down for, and like a second, I'd be down for something like that. I don't think I could do it with Rob, and I'll tell you why. I think if Ayton hadn't had the emotional situation where, he's beefing with Monty Williams, teammates calling him soft, like visual evidence of him taking plays off against Denver and just like letting Jokic rebound in front of his face, I'd be all in, because Ayton, the talent, I think he needs a change of scenery anyway. I do think he has a lot more of great play in his career, but it almost seems like we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we send them our defensive anchor, probably one of the best defensive players in the entire league, for a guy who doesn't play much defense and has had these, I don't want to call them off-court issues, because it could have all just been with Monty Williams, and he's gone now. So I like to give him the benefit of the doubt because he's a young, good talent. But I think Rob in that deal would be too much. But I would not hate the Celtics exploring that at all. Would not hate that.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm in agreement with everything you guys have said so far. My biggest thing with this is I don't get why so many people can't grasp that 2 things can be true at the same time. Because, Steve, you said it. Like, obviously, the Suns won this trade. How they pulled, I also assume they're only able to pull this off because of Beal's no trade clause. The Wizards really put themselves in a bind with that one.
Yeah.
His contract was huge.
Can I jump in on that quick again too? Because it's the crux. It's a little tease. I'm writing about this Friday about the Wizards in Portland and holding on to your star players for too long, because we've been talking about that they should trade Bradley Beal since this podcast started every summer. The Wizards aren't going anywhere. They should probably trade Bradley Beal, and they don't do it. They don't, and then you sign him to the extension, give him the no trade clause, which he would not have needed. He would have just taken the supermax, and you end up with this. Like, you could have had, and maybe, the fact that the CBA changed and superstar trades, like the bigger picture thing is that superstar trades might be just less than they ever were last summer. And maybe last summer was the peak of the market when Rudy Gobert is getting 7 first-round picks, and maybe that's when you should have traded Brad Beal. So it's just like, it's just Washington, like, fuck it, like Washington is just hilarious. They're just a hilarious organization. Anyways, that's the only aside I wanted to make there. Donnie, continue.
Yeah, and to your point, like, they're about to get Chris Paul, and they're gonna have to get rid of him. He doesn't want to play in Washington, bro. And they probably didn't even want him. So, like, the best asset you got from this is Chris Paul, and he's gonna have to walk. And now you have no superstar. You really have no assets in return. It's just I guess you have spending money going forward, but it's like even more of a complete rebuild than we thought Washington was going to have to go through. They kind of showed some promise too with Kuzma and Porzingis last year, both outplaying expectations, and now they might have to move those guys because it doesn't seem like that's the right move to hold on to both of them.
Happy you mentioned Kuzma because he was liking a lot of Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant content, and there was a lot of mutual likes going on there.
That feels like the guy standing outside the circle trying to peek, pop his head in and be like, "Hey, don't forget about me."
The one connection between all four of these guys, though, is all Team USA, all heavily involved Team USA. That's where the Beal Durant thing I know came from, and that's where Durant it's just Durant just wants to hoop with guys he likes. Like it feels like maybe he's just like big Kyle Kuzma fan. Just like get over here, man. Let's go ball. Like I don't know. Kevin Durant's team building is interesting for sure. But keep going, Donnie.
No, what I was saying before that though was I don't get why people don't think two things can be true. So obviously the Suns won the trade. Beal is an amazing addition to any team, really. But at the same time, which is also true, and people can't admit to both things, their defense is bad. Their lack of depth is bad. And one of the craziest takes I've heard was Colin Cowherd said, all these, he was going down the list of like the Bucks, the Celtics, the Miami Heat. They got they were all in like the bottom half of production from bench last season. It's like, dude, that's not the production from your bench isn't everything. It's having a specific player on your bench that can step up in huge moments that's not going to show in an average of the course of a season. Like, yeah, the Celtics didn't have great bench production, but you brought in a guy like Malcolm Brogdon for a reason. And the Miami Heat, it's like Caleb Martin was the reason they made that playoff run. He was a bench guy to start the year.
Max Strus wouldn't have started in the playoffs if it wasn't for Tyler Hero getting hurt. He stepped up. He had a great playoffs before the finals. I know he shit the bed in the finals, but he was another reason.
Everyone's harping on this thing that you don't need a good bench if you have this star power, which could be true, but also the key to building a great team is to have great bench players on that great team as well. The Denver Nuggets don't win the NBA Finals if Christian Brown and I don't know why I can't think of it right now, and Bruce Brown aren't on that team. Yeah. Like, it's just, you need guys like that. And the most interesting thing to me is that the only role player that was part of this deal that the Suns sent away was Landry Shamet. And in game 4, of the Nuggets Suns series, he was their third leading scorer.
Yeah, the 3-point game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant at 36, Devin Booker at 36, Shamet had 19, and the next closest was Jock Landale with 8 points.
Hey.
And
shout out my guy Landale.
So it's like,
but hey, if you're replacing that game, if you could expect 30 and 30 from Booker and Durant in a playoff game, and then you just replace Brad Beal with Landry Shamet. Hey, that's not bad.
But it doesn't.
That's what I mean. Like, I get it, and I do think they won the trade. They're probably going to be great. They're probably going to be better than last year. But this idea that their good bench or their lack of bench depth doesn't matter, or their lack of defense doesn't matter, is crazy to me.
No, you're right. It's mattered. It's the reason they lost the fucking finals was because they didn't have a center behind the eight. And it's been a problem for years for them.
And they're just refusing to acknowledge that. That's the big thing with the Suns. Yeah. And this is what happened in the Kevin Durant deal too. And I still think it was a great move getting KD, but look who you gave up for KD, and look what they did in Brooklyn. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson were both phenomenal when they got to Brooklyn. And those are two guys that are the perfect type of guys. Now Bridges has stepped up and looked like a star. And Cam Johnson, we didn't see this in Phoenix. We didn't expect him to play as well as he did in Brooklyn when he got there. It's just, I think he averaged over like 16 points a game in Brooklyn. Mikal Bridges was like 25, 5, and 6 or something like that. It was... With Phoenix, it's like, yeah, you're getting all this star power, but you've had the same problem for 3 years. And instead of kind of acknowledging that and trying to solve that, you're just like, we're going to get another superstar and see if it works. and that, to me, I don't think is the answer. And like I said, if they trade Ayton and maybe they get some depth in a package for him, maybe my answer will change. But it's like, yeah, you won the deal. You won the deal. You kind of fleeced Washington with what you gave up to get Bradley Beal, because I think everyone thought he was going to go for a lot more. Mm-hmm. And your team didn't really improve, though, in my mind. That's where I have the big issue with it. It's like, yeah, you won the deal, but you got someone where, like, yeah, Bradley Beal's great. He's a great player. but I don't know if it really took your team to that next level. That's the big issue.
For sure.
Yeah, people tweeting out asking if Phoenix is already the title favorite after the trade was made. It's like, no,
Outrageous.
probably
It's still
just
Denver. It's
Yeah,
still
Denver
probably
would beat them in 5. Denver would beat them in 5
Well,
because
they
you
just
got
beat 'em in
DeAndre
6, so I
Ayton
don't
for
know.
15 minutes against Jokic. Good luck.
They did just beat him in 6, so I don't know about that.
Yeah, but it took a ridiculous playoff
Yeah, and
series
now
from
they have a
Devin
better,
Booker.
and now they got a better guy with them. That's all I'm
Yep.
saying. The West is going to be wide open outside of Denver, and I think Phoenix is best positioned out of all those other teams. I think that's what it helped with.
It is just such a weird one because like
Unless we're talking OKC like that, which is
Yeah.
you can talk to me about that, or Portland, depending on what the fuck they decide to do, because they could be really interesting if they wanted to be, or they could be really boring. I mean, there's some teams that can make some moves, but who else are we talking?
I think there's a lot of teams in the West could switch things up.
The Lakers probably are going to be around.
Lakers are they'll be there. I mean,
last thing I'll say about it. Obviously, I think they're a good team, great team. They have 3 phenomenal players. I don't think anyone's trying to say that the Phoenix Suns are bad. And who knows? By the time we even get on the mics next week, they could have traded Ayton and they could have those role players that they're dying for. And then, they'd probably be the second favorite out of the West. I think Denver, no matter what move they make, unless they somehow bring in like LeBron James or something, or if they were to somehow be the team that gets Draymond, I don't think they're going to start next season as the title favorite over Denver. I also think the Ayton thing's going to be hard to accomplish. Like I heard Nick Wright say, what if you trade DeAndre Ayton's contract and get 3 role players on $10 million deals in return? It's like, that's not that easy to accomplish.
Yeah, where are you getting that from?
Find the team. If you think about the Ayton teams, there's not going to be teams banging down the door. It's going to be a lot of hard negotiations, I feel like.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, Ishbia, I think, still has some work to do as far as this offseason. And if they roll out with Ayton, you better hope he likes the new head coach. And that gets us to draft talk, guys. Draft 2 days away, Thursday.
The Wemby sweepstakes are over. He's going to be going to San Antonio.
What are you guys' thoughts here? I mean, we talked about I know you guys' thoughts because we talked about a little before we hopped on here. It's going to be one of the weirdest drafts ever. There's more names that I shouldn't say don't recognize, but there's more names that I don't really know much about the players' games in a draft probably since I was like 10 years old. It's just crazy that this is what the draft is probably going to be like going forward. A lot of guys that aren't coming from college ball, whether it's overseas or, the different leagues that you can play in now to get yourself to this point. So it's interesting. Outside of Wembanyama or Thursday night, it's gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's more. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, for me, it's more like the NHL draft now and everything with like the junior leagues and everything else. Like you have guys that you just like don't have as much opportunity to see, like you said. What's really helped me give me like a perspective on this draft for the whole year is like 2K created draft things, is because I've been looking at them all season long, like as they've been updated, starting new things. Like you see, like at least get an idea of the draft class. Like I wonder how many kids like only know of people from that, like from those, or like a TikTok or something like that. Like the way our younger generations are going to find out about these prospects is completely different. It's going to be like guys that get hype are going to be completely different guys. And like you said, there's a lot of guys that are getting drafted super high that no one in the American public has seen. I think, Steve, you talk about the Thompson twins, who I think we both think we're high on, but I've never watched an overtime elite game like from start to finish. So I don't know.
From start to finish, no, it's just highlights, and anyone can look good in a highlight reel, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just going off what people are saying, because there's been a lot of chatter about Amen Thompson. They're both supposed to go top, 6 probably. very potential. They could go 4 and 5 after the big three. But, I think Amen's a little bit above his brother.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of hype about him. But look who's sitting at 4. It's the Houston Rockets. Do they really need a guard like that? No, that's not the point they need. So we're looking at potentially the Rockets probably trading down, trading out, maybe trying to get something for that pick because it's still a valuable pick because there's that unknown, there's that potential there. But then if you scroll up too, the only team that's not trading in the top 5 is the San Antonio Spurs at 1. The Charlotte Hornets could trade that pick. The Portland Trailblazers could trade that pick. The Houston Rockets could trade their pick. And Detroit, who was banking on trying to get the number 1 overall pick, now they fall to 5. You could see that. So we could see one of the most wild NBA drafts where there's so many guys that the public fan has clueless about. And don't you worry, everyone will get on there. They'll be texting on their Twitter, being an expert, saying, I love this pick. I watch this guy. You know how they do in any draft. NFL draft is really when they're notorious for it. But everyone's will be like, I love this guy. But the fact of the matter is, and I'll be the first to admit it, we didn't watch a lot of these top guys 1 through 6, 1 through 7 potentially play full games. I love college basketball. There's a decent amount of college basketball guys in here, but this is one of the rare times where there's not a ton of college basketball guys at the top.
Yeah.
Yes, Brandon Miller's there, but Brandon Miller's got the biggest question mark of everyone.
No one wants to hype him up. No one wants to talk about
nobody wants to. Everyone's trying to just ignore it, forget it. But that's a huge question mark because we're looking at what? Just a guy named John Morant who's showing, it doesn't matter how talented they are. If there's off-court issues, there's off-court issues. And they don't typically just go away at the snap of a finger. So you look at that, and Brandon Miller, I think, by far is probably the most, not hyped, but best college basketball prospect, or at least that's how it looks like right now. Obviously, there could be guys who kind of come out, and once the NBA season starts, it's like, how'd we miss this guy? There's a couple names I do really like more in the teens as kind of sleeper picks. Chris Murray is one of them. Keegan's brother played at Iowa, kind of plays the same style of game. I really like him. Another one, too, who could just come off the bench and score, Jordan Hawkins at UConn, champion, has a lot of potential there. There's certain guys like that. There's other ones, but right now it's crazy because we're looking at the top 5 of 6 picks, right? If it goes this way, if it goes the way, and I know trades could change everything up, but if it goes Wemby, Scooter Miller at 2, 3, whatever order you want to do it, and Thompson, and then maybe, Cam Whitmore at 6. We have Walker out of Houston, maybe at 6. You're looking at the top 4 guys out of 6 being guys who didn't play college basketball. And if you want to throw Brandon Miller in there, even though he played college basketball, 5 of 6 guys with kind of question marks, regardless of, we didn't really watch him play. What's going to go on here? Like, what's the level of competition difference going to look like? Also with Brandon Miller, like, we know what his question marks are. It's just crazy because these are 5, 6 guys that have potential to be huge players in the league, especially like when people are talking about it. Scoot Miller could go 1 in a different year if Wemby wasn't in this draft class. That's 3 potential number 1 overall picks. You don't see that, but this draft isn't getting as much hype as previous drafts outside of Wembanyama. He's the exception to the rule because there's just so much unknown here. And I think that's what I love about the draft, because if it's unknown for us, I think it's going to be a lot more teams taking chances, whether that is making trades, trading down, or saying, hey, we're going to try to go get our guy. And I really love that because I think we're going to see a lot of very, very, very talented college basketball players fall to the teens, maybe the early 20s, where you maybe don't need a lottery pick to get a guy who normally would be a lottery pick. And then we are going to see which teams, because I really do think we're going to see multiple trades probably in the top 6, 7 picks this year, where teams make deals because they're going to go for these guys. Because they're like, you know what? Maybe you didn't see a lot of Amen Thompson, an overtime elite, but we did, and we love what we see. We're going to go after him. And I think it's going to set up for a chaotic, but also a very unique and beautiful draft class, because the only thing we've been talking about for 4 months is Wemby. Guess what? After Wemby, there's 59 more picks to go. so it's like that. Once Wemby is the least of our concerns this draft, because that's the only one we have locked in stone we know is going 1. And then the rest is just craziness because, like I said, you don't see this where 4 of the top 5 guys might not play college basketball. That's crazy to me.
It is, and I'm glad you brought up the trades because I think I'm just gonna predict this. I think this draft we will see the most trades throughout the lottery picks that we've ever seen in an NBA draft before.
I'm right there with you.
And Jake, I know you want to talk about this because we brought up Zion earlier. Like, what's stopping a team like Charlotte for trading for Zion Williamson?
Man, Charlotte it's so interesting because like they have three, honestly, they're all good options, kind of, right? Like in a way, they all have pros and cons to the options, but all good options. You take Scoot and that's the biggest, that Scoot is the highest ceiling, I think, of all these options, because Scoot seems to be like a guy that everybody is in agreement is going to be a surefire NBA star. He has the talent and has the work ethic and has the maturity that we're talking about there. Like he's a guy you can build a franchise on. He's going to get better at everything he does every year, whatever. So you take that guy usually, but does he fit with LaMelo? If you get him, is there a trade market for LaMelo? Maybe that's the big surprise, is that Charlotte drafts Scoot and then LaMelo Ball is on the move in the lottery to who knows where, maybe to Portland. Who knows? Maybe that's where, maybe there's something like I don't know, like what, that's like the domino effect of what Charlotte decides to do really is going to, it's going to be crazy, because if they take Miller, then Scoot's available at 3, then Portland, oh shit, like now we have Scoot here. Can you really have Scoot, Dame, Sharp, and Simons? Like what is, you got to trade one of them,
the 3rd pick,
and you don't. And they've said Portland is just telling us everything because it's draft season. They're like, well, we don't want to trade Dame, but we can't trade the 3rd pick. It's like you can't just have 4 guards and just throw them out there. So they have to, even if it's a smaller move, maybe even they move Simons and bring in a big or something like that. Portland's going to have to make a move at some sort. And you guys brought up Houston and Detroit. Both those 2 teams thought they were going to have the number 1 pick. Like both those teams were basically banking on Wemby shots. I think Houston and both those teams seem like they want to be good next year. Like at least not good, but competitive.
Houston's not taking a Thompson. There's no way. No, there's no way that fits. They have to trade out of that, right?
For all we know, Houston sends like number 4 and gets like Harden and Tobias and like some crazy package or something. Like I could see like all these creative like sign and trade deals coming in. Like who knows what, like, because it's quiet right now too after the last couple of days of craziness. Now it's getting quiet again. But really, when it comes down to 3, Dame, if you're Portland, and Scoot Henderson is there, or Brandon Miller is there at 3, I just don't see how you can keep Dame anymore. And I understand, like, unless you have a trade, like that team needs to be, if you're going to keep him, you got to make the team better next year, and they got to be a playoff contender at the very least. And that means trading 3. I think if they keep Dame and keep 3, and even if they do a Simons smaller trade or whatever else, I just think it does a disservice to both whoever that 3rd pick is and to Dame, because it's the 2 timelines thing we talked about with the Warriors, except they're not the fucking Warriors. So like, why do we think it's going to work for the Blazers here? It's just a mess. And I think that maybe they're sending out all these smoke signals because they know what they're going to do. And that's going to be the real shocker, is at 3 when, you know, Damian Lillard gets traded in the lottery, or number 3 gets traded for Pascal Siakam or something like that. Like whatever kind of trade is out there that we're not even thinking about.
I think it's probably in the Blazers' best interest at this point to trade Dame instead of the 3.
I agree. Yeah.
I think you
should have last year. It's the same thing as Beal. Should have done it last summer.
Maybe 3 years.
But also it feels like Dame's more willing to be moved now.
Yeah,
it also feels that
that flirting with the Heat has been very loud since he mentioned it on a podcast. Literally told us
very loud, almost intentionally.
Yeah. since he shit on Boston and then said he wanted to go to Miami. But no, I think for all the reasons we are talking about how interesting this draft is, probably makes it pretty damn hard to get a good return compared to other years for a number 3 pick. Like, I don't know what the return is this year for a number 3 pick because of all the question mark. Obviously, if it was the number 1, which San Antonio would never do, because you have a chance at Wemby. You don't have a chance at Wemby at 2 or 3. You don't know about
and
the
you don't
rest
know
of
what
these
teams
guys.
want. Like, teams are going to be waiting to see what happens with Charlotte. That's the thing. Like, if teams want Scoot and Scoot goes at 2, they're gonna be like, well, we're not trading. Why are we trading up to 3? We don't want Brandon Miller. Like, there are got to be teams in both those.
There's some teams that won't want to take the risk on Brandon Miller. They're like, I'm not going to pay that package. So that's the thing. If Scoot goes 2, I think it makes it so much harder for Portland to trade that pick.
Yeah,
I think it makes it 1,000 times harder for Portland to trade that pick. Because now you have a team that's like, all right, we have to give up a big package to move up to take on a risk.
Yeah. And it makes it harder to trade Dame if they draft Scoot, because everybody's going to know you're going to want it. Basically going to be like, oh, you want to trade Dame now. You have all these guards.
Yeah.
So they're working from a disadvantage at either of these trades, and they put themselves in this position.
Right.
Thursday night's going to be interesting, man.
Yeah.
You guys got anything else on the draft here?
Well, I'm just interested in Charlotte, what Charlotte and Portland do, because they're bad organizations. So I really think they're probably going to do something stupid, actually, and might benefit the teams trading with them more than them themselves.
I think it's exciting specifically for Charlotte because of the new ownership thing. I think what a time to do it than at the NBA draft.
Trade for Zion and put LaMelo and Zion, bring them home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they've
Carolinas.
What is up with oh my God, I just thought of this too. If Charlotte takes Brandon Miller, like think about the track record of their team. It was James Bouknight last year fell asleep with a gun on his lap. All the stuff Miles Bridges has gone through the past years, and his trouble with the law. If they take the shot on Brandon Miller, bro, like this, it could just be a bad look for the franchise in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe Zion is the move for Charlotte, but who knows? He's got his off-court shit too.
Yeah. Feels like if I had to make the prediction, I think Scoot's going number 2, just because he's been the number 2 guy for much longer than Miller was the number 2 guy. Yeah.
He's a human anomaly away from being the number 1 pick. Like,
without question.
Like, Wemby doesn't stroll his alien ass to the U.S. Scoot's going 1 every single day of the week.
Crazy comparisons right now.
Yes,
he's getting some crazy.
He might be criminally underrated at this point.
Yeah, Scoot's
that's why I think. And Charlotte is in a position to get a package for that second pick.
Yes, they are.
I think so. Maybe that's the move Charlotte's got to make. Maybe they're like, you know what? Maybe we completely blow it up.
Baby.
We get a package for that second overall pick.
Give me Zion back in Carolina. What is going home always fixes everything, doesn't it? I'm sure he'll be great.
Last thing I'll say here about the draft. This is my last thought. Keep an eye out for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They still have so many goddamn picks.
Oh my God, bro. I can't. If they traded up and got one of those guys to add to that roster next year, I'll put that finals ticket in day after the draft. I don't even care.
And talk about a team that knows how to draft, right? I know Chat got hurt, but Jalen Williams and Jalen Williams were both good, and Yang was a lottery pick. I know he didn't have the biggest role, but they've shown before.
But this goes all the way back.
Oh, yeah.
They drafted Harden, Russ, KD, and Serge Ibaka as well.
Yep. Sam Presti knows what he's doing. I want the Thompson twins to end up there. So I think me and Steve talked about that last week.
That'd be cool.
Thompson's in OKC was my dream because they got all that. We need them together. They got to go somewhere together. That's
like the Morris twins getting drafted to Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man, I'm here for it. So keep an eye out for OKC. The lottery is going to be crazy. I'm calling. I think lots of trades. I think most trades we've ever seen in the first round.
Love it.
Yeah, Thursday's going to be awesome.
Yes, sir.
Is that it from you guys?
Any sleeper guys? Any sleeper guys you like?
I mean, my guy, all of the last 2 years, or not 2 years ago as much, but last year, I don't know where he's going in the drafts, but I hope Marcus Carr finds himself in a good situation from Texas. I don't know why. I've just always liked him as a point guard. Always liked him as a playmaker. I'm curious to see where he goes. I know it's kind of boring because he could even be a second round pick, but we'll see. How about you, Jake?
Not really. I really like I like Cam Whitmore a lot too. It's not really a sleeper, but just later lottery, I guess. Like I think Cam Whitmore is going to be solid right away. I'm looking at some of the college guys that are coming out right now. Like, does a Derek Lively interest you, Steve? Do you think Lively can be like a big, like, could he be? Who was I thinking of for him when I've seen him all year? What is this dude's name? Clint Capella. Could Derek Lively be Clint Capella? Because I feel like he's a guy that can kind of bounce everywhere and be like a really good defensive center right away.
He could. I mean, we've seen kind of in previous draft classes too, defensive center actually kind of had a role, like especially the big example
right away,
being Walker Kessler for the Utah Jazz, really. And I was a guy, not that I whiffed on, but I really think he'd have the role he did this year. Definitely could. It's tough to say because I don't know. Lively to me is a lot more, I think, than other players. He's your classic. He's young too, right? He's a freshman out of Duke, big guy. I think he's 7'1", 7'2". Like he obviously went through a good program. Huge. Lively to me is a weird one because I think you could almost wait a little bit if you want to get I think he's going to get overdrafted because I think there's other defensive centers you could probably get in the second round to kind of play the same role if you want. And there's other guys too that I just it's a weird draft class because a lot of the guys that kind of balled out in college aren't really getting the draft type they really have. One guy whose name that I wanted to bring up, Amani Bates, is someone
I was just going to bring him up
he's had an interesting track record, but he's got that super, super high ceiling, and he probably won't go until the 20s. I talked about him already briefly, but Chris Murray is a guy you want to talk about, someone who's shown it. Chris Murray really stepped up the year after Keegan left, and we saw what Keegan did for the Sacramento Kings. Chris Murray is in that prime spot to be drafted by a team like the Sacramento Kings, where it's like, all right, we need a couple more players to add on. He doesn't have to be the guy, and it doesn't have to be the Kings, but I'm saying a team that could use a guy like Chris Murray, who's a kind of a 3-and-D guy. He's going to stretch the floor. He's going to play good defense for you. He's going to hit his open shots, and he's got length too. I think Murray is 6'9" or something like that. So you look at guys like that, and then you can go down the list. You have smaller guards, Sasser, Isaiah Wong, Miami and Houston, guys like that.
Hey, Amari Bailey, another high recruit who didn't get as much playing time last year as that you thought, maybe he's a guy. Like I feel like there's a lot of guys in that low first, second round range there's at least a couple of them that were really high ranked 5-star, high 4-star guys that just didn't pan out first 2 years. And there's a lot of teams that take chances on those guys with the pedigree and are just like, maybe it was a bad situation. A lot of smart teams that do that, and those kinds of guys work out. And I feel like Bailey, you mentioned Bates earlier, he was my number one thought about that. Like a guy, all the talent in the world. I mean, if someone can figure out what to do with him, he might pop off. Like, it's going to be interesting to see. This class is just so, as we've talked about, just so it's going to be wide open. It's going to be someone in the second round is going to be one of the biggest stars out of it, for 100%.
Sure.
Well,
all right.
I think that'll do it, guys. We'll see it Thursday night for the NBA draft. We'll see Wemby. Hopefully, maybe he's wearing a little Spurs suit action on the court while he
should just have the jersey on. He should just have the jersey on.
Yep, just have it ready.
Just ready, dude.
Everyone's in suits. Wemby's got the Spurs number 1 pick jersey on. What a move that would be.
Plug it.
That would be unreal.
All right, guys. For Steve, Jake, myself, follow Trainwreck Sports. Follow us on all socials at Happy Hour Hoops 1. And tune into our Twitter on a Thursday because we'll be updating as the draft goes along, and should be a wild ride. Get ready for all these trades during the lottery, folks.
Have a good night.
Peace.